Hey, what's going on, everyone? The African Water Show. We got an update on Hurricane Melissa, which is expected to rapidly intensify into a major Category 5 hurricane before making landfall in Jamaica early next week. I've got all the details coming right up, right? So thanks for joining me here on this Saturday evening. We have a lot to talk about in this video, as we will be going over all the latest details on, again, Hurricane Melissa, which just became a Category 1 hurricane early this afternoon. We are expecting it to undergo, again, an extreme phase of rapid intensification before slamming Jamaica again as a catastrophic Category 4 hurricane. We have breaking news from the National Hurricane Center. It is now officially expected to become a Category 5 hurricane before making landfall, but we'll get into the detail a little bit further into why exactly this storm isn't going to make landfall as a Category 5, but how it's still going to be quite possibly equally as impactful. Alright, so starting out here, we're going to take a look at your current satellite loop of the Caribbean Ocean. Again, you can see we just have our main show as of right now, but we're going to be kind of looking at what's surrounding Hurricane Melissa at the moment. So you can see we have a couple things going on. One, we do have a cold front that is starting to sweep down from the north that has been bringing a little bit of wind shear and maybe even some dry air intrusion into the center of circulation from Melissa, but now due to all of this convection going on, that's not going to be a problem for the storm. So that likely will not, again, be something that we need a reference to, I guess, for the couple of days, really. We're not going to really need to worry about that. We also do have some showers and storms that are some related to Melissa down south here into, again, Central America and Northern and South America, but really there's nothing much going on other than that, again, excluding the main show, which for obvious reasons is Hurricane Melissa. So we move on here to, the National Hurricane Center forecast homepage. You can see that, again, the one thing we have going on is we have Hurricane Melissa. The latest advisory has this at a 90-mile-per-hour Category 1 hurricane. This has already jumped, 30 miles per hour, I believe, today in strength. It's finally starting to get its act together. That pressure number is dropping significantly, so it is now down to 974 millibars. This will likely become a Category 2 to Category 3 hurricane by the time you're watching this video. Alright, but movement is still pretty much stationary west at 3 miles per hour, so basically little movement has occurred with the storm, but it is still staying south of Jamaica as right now, but that will change in a couple of days. So what the National Hurricane Center is saying is that Melissa is likely starting to rapidly intensify and is expected to become a major hurricane tomorrow. Life-threatening and catastrophic flash flooding and landslides expected in portions of southern Hispaniola and Jamaica into early next week. That is very, very concerning and strong wording from the National Hurricane Center. Again, these guys do not mess around. They don't throw those words out lightly. That kind of just shows you that even the best of the best, they understand how, grave this situation is and how dangerous, just this hurricane is in general. But we look now at the kind of close-up satellite view of Hurricane Melissa, and there's a really interesting thing I want to talk about. You've been seeing very, very impactful bursts of convection, very strong and cold cloud tops around the center of circulation. You can see it really has that look to it. Again, you can see a very well-defined center of circulation, no dry hurricane eye or anything like that yet, but it is really starting to get that nice look. But I do want to notice that at the very end of this loop here, you can see that we have a huge burst of convection going on, and this is likely a sign of extreme rapid intensification already ongoing. So I believe that this is going to be the start where we really start to see that number drop significantly, and I think it's going to be a good time to look at recon data again, as we're going to have many flights going in and out of the storm, really at all times, because again, I really do think that this number is going to be dropping significantly, at least that pressure number, but these winds are likely starting to ramp up quite significantly, again, with that huge burst of intensification in the center circulation. So when you see again those pinks and those purples, these are the cloudest thunderstorm tops you can get. That's exactly what we look for in strengthening tropical cyclones, and in this case that's exactly what we're talking about here. But at this point, again, you can see how close the storm is to Jamaica. You're already starting to get reports of extremely dangerous and catastrophic flash flooding potentially that's about to get started out here in the southeastern corner of Jamaica, but the major impacts will begin tomorrow, again, as the storm continues to inch its way farther up towards the island. But very significant impacts are already underway across southern Haiti and again, this thing is just now getting started. So you can even see some significant outer bands starting to develop on the backside of the storm as well. This is something we're going to need to watch out for, again, with a possible tornado threat. Any of these outer bands that make it over land are definitely going to have the potential to produce water spouts and some tornadoes with enough dry air intrusion on the southern side especially. Again, that could lead to a little bit more of a heightened tornado potential. So just a all-out, catastrophic hurricane, to say the least. But this is the latest forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center. Nothing much has changed. However, has changed. However, they have officially issued hurricane watches now for the eastern part of Cuba. So all of eastern Cuba is currently under a hurricane watch. These will likely get upgraded to hurricane warnings over the next couple of days. But once again, all of Jamaica is currently under a hurricane warning. You have tropical storm warnings up for southern Haiti and hurricane watches up for the rest of the coastline there. So we are expecting this to really, by the next forecast point, which should be later tonight, this to rapidly intensify again into a major hurricane, and it will stay as a major hurricane all the way until it gets past Cuba. So again, it will make landfall as a major hurricane right around 2 a.m. Tuesday. Okay, so that is exactly when they are expecting the landfall point to be, right around 2 a.m. Monday night into Tuesday morning. And then the storm will slowly inch its way over the island. Again, that is a direct hit into Jamaica and eventually work its way into eastern Cuba before starting to speed up and race out to sea. But even by the time it gets into the Bahamas, it will still likely be a Category 1 to Category 2 hurricane. And I would not be shocked if we still had a Category 3 hurricane on our hands by the time it got to this point. It really depends on a few things, but we'll break that down in a second. And then again, it is expected to continue to curve north away from the eastern United States. Alright, so to give us an idea of how strong exactly the National Hurricane Center is expecting this to be, again, the only forecast points that we saw said M for major hurricane, but this is how strong exactly they are expecting the storm to get. So again, the latest forecast point has this as a Category 1 hurricane with maximum wind speeds of 90 miles per hour. But notice, as soon as this hits Category 3 status, they are expecting it to further continue to rapidly intensify into a Category 4 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 130 miles per hour. And a new forecast point that they've issued here and introduced is that they're expecting the storm to officially hit Category 5 status. So this is breaking news. This is the latest forecast from the National Hurricane Center, came in about 45 minutes ago. They finally did issue their first Category 5 forecast point. So again, they're expecting this storm to be a catastrophic Category 5 hurricane with 160 mile per hour sustained winds and wind gusts of up to 200 miles per hour, again, just south of Jamaica. So by, I believe this should be Tuesday afternoon, or excuse me, Monday afternoon, that's when we are expecting this, again, to reach Category 5 status. But the good news is that this is not expected to make landfall as a Category 5 hurricane. However, we're still going to see a very high-end Category 4 hurricane landfall, to the point where it's unlikely that we're going to see really a huge difference. Again, that's only a couple miles per hour off. So the landfall forecast point here for Melissa is that the storm will have maximum sustained winds of 150 miles per hour, which is about 10 miles per hour shy of a Category 4 hurricane, but still, or excuse me, Category 5. But you still have maximum sustained winds, or excuse me, wind gusts of up to 190 miles per hour. So still a absolutely catastrophic hurricane. Again, making a direct landfall and then going right into eastern Cuba, still as a Category 4 hurricane. And then the next forecast point after that, it's interesting, it's in the Bahamas here. We are expecting it to move through the Bahamas after it goes through Cuba. The latest National Hurricane Center forecast has this as a Category 2 hurricane, still with maximum sustained winds of over 200 miles per hour, 100 miles per hour. But I still do think that there's a chance we could see still a major hurricane by the time it gets to this point. Am I saying that's certain? No, but I definitely do think that it's still not out of the question, and then at that point it'll continue to move off to the north, eventually becoming an extratropical cyclone. So that is the latest forecast from the National Hurricane Center. Now we look at the HAFSA hurricane model. This is the 12Z run from today. So you can see that they have initiated the storm pretty much perfectly, again, at 988 millibars, almost a little bit off from what we had in terms of a strength standpoint. Usually these are much stronger, but no, this time the storm is actually being initialized a lot weaker than it is. Right now it's at, I believe, 900 and 78 millibars or so. This is a whole 10 millibars off, so it's actually showing a weaker solution, so we can kind of keep that in mind as we look at this run. But what they are expecting again is the storm will continue to rapidly intensify in line with what the National Hurricane Center forecast is saying, but they actually want the storm to drift a little bit farther southwest rather than due west. So again, the National Hurricane Center kind of wants a west-northwest movement with the storm to work its way closer to Jamaica, and then eventually, obviously, curve to the north and make landfall. The HAFSA kind of wants a more southern track, which would give this more time to strengthen. So, in a way, this is actually a more concerning kind of output here that the HAFSA is showing rather than what the National Hurricane Center is showing, and that's exactly what we see here. The storm does get down into the 939 millibar range, which again is likely a low-end Category 5 hurricane, still a catastrophic hurricane, and actually does deepen past that. We get into the 920s here, 921 millibar low pressure. That would shatter the record for pressure, at least for this year. Again, that's not all time. This year, this would, if something like this would happen, again, this would end up being the strongest hurricane of this year. But we have a very strong Category 5 hurricane just south of Jamaica, and it's still sub 930 millibars, so you still have a very strong, I don't know what else to call it, a Category 5 hurricane. It's catastrophic, and it is bearing down on Jamaica, and this is as we're getting to Tuesday evening. So keep in mind this is a little bit later than what the National Hurricane Center is showing, but as we get past Tuesday, again, notice how the timing is later because the HAFSA wants the storm to have more time overseas rather than immediately curve north, and I think that's why you get an extra 12 hours or so by this model rather than what the National Hurricane Center is showing, all because of that first-hand movement. Again, if we see the southwest track, that's going to give this more time to kind of heat up and eventually move north, which, again, it's going to be right around 12 hours difference, rather than what the National Hurricane Center is showing, where it's just going to go west-northwest and then curve right into Jamaica, again, limiting the time for strengthening, but still going to see that rapid intensification. Alright, so this plows into southern Jamaica as a very low-end Category 5 to extremely high-end Category 4 hurricane. Again, it really does not make a difference, but this is a catastrophic storm. Again, you get life-threatening impacts to all of Jamaica here, anywhere near that outer and inner core. But the storm continues to plow right through the Jamaica, and then it gets into Cuba. You can see that center of circulation looks to get a little bit ripped apart, and the storm does weaken quite a bit, gets down to the 955 millibar range, so still likely a Category 3 to Category 4 hurricane, and boom, it makes a second landfall on eastern Cuba, again, as a likely catastrophic hurricane still. Continues to move north into the Bahamas, still bring extremely heavy rain and very damaging winds. And then after that, continues to move north into the wide open Atlantic. So that's the latest from the HAFSA, still showing a very, very dangerous and likely catastrophic solution here. Again, bringing heavy rainfall for days across Jamaica, but it also does allow for more strengthening with this, and actually does show a much stronger solution rather than what other model runs have been showing. So now we look at the HWRF model for a kind of a baseline here, because this is a model that has been rock solid with hurricanes this year, but it has been showing a little bit more of a weaker solution, kind of in line with the National Hurricane Center. It's also very hard to use the term weaker with this kind of hurricane, again, when we're so confident that it is going to rapidly intensify. There really is no solution that is weaker or stronger, but the HWRF actually doesn't want a Category 5 hurricane, and I'll show you guys in a minute, but you can see that we do start off the run, again, with pretty much the exact same movement predicted by the National Hurricane Center, again, that west-northwest movement, and the storm does continue to deepen, getting that pressure down into the sub-950 millibar range. And at this point, it already is starting to turn northeast, so this is pretty much right in line with what the National Hurricane Center is showing. But after it gets down to the sub-950 millibar range, it does not strengthen any more past that, okay? It does not get down to the 930s, and definitely does not get down to the 920s. Therefore, this likely does not become a Category 5 hurricane. Again, a 945 millibar low pressure system is likely equivalent to a mid-range Category 4 hurricane. Okay, so as for the winds, I guess you could say that is a little bit more of a, better solution, but this is still a very strong, catastrophic Category 4 hurricane. This is still bringing extremely intense, damaging wind gusts, again, over 180 miles per hour, but this does plow right through, again, the south shore of Jamaica as a 949 millibar low pressure system. Again, Category 4 hurricane, and it does slow down, literally stalling out over Jamaica. Again, this is about 12 to 15 hours of pure, chaos across all of Jamaica. Again, you can see literally all of Jamaica is taken up by these reds and these purples. That is torrential rainfall, again, for hours upon hours, and you're also talking about a never-ending inner core that is just going to pound the island, again, with wind gusts of up to 190 miles per hour. This is also not a good solution at all. So, between the HWF and the HAFSA, you're either going to get two solutions. One, you're going to get more time for strength, and you're going to get a stronger storm, but maybe a little bit less slow-moving, or you're going to get a slightly weaker storm, but still a very catastrophic Category 4 hurricane, but more slow-moving. So it's kind of pick your poison with this situation here, and the storm just continues to just sit over the island before finally moving north, and it actually does look a little bit stronger here on the HWRF rather than what the HAFSA model was showing, at least for Cuba. And it does make landfall quite a bit farther to the west. So the HAFSA kind of showed it going into extreme eastern Cuba before going way out to sea. The HWRF actually brings us a little bit farther to the west, but it really doesn't make a huge difference. I know there's a major city out here. I don't believe it would end up impacting it as much as a direct landfall in that area would. But you still get a major hurricane to make landfall here. Likely bring some extreme impacts, again, with both rain and wind, and then it goes right into the Bahamas, still as a 962 millibar low pressure system, still likely a Cat 2, Cat 3 hurricane, and then it, after that moves north and goes into the wide open Atlantic, and that's that. So both runs here, again, agreeing on a very catastrophic hurricane, making basically three landfalls, again, one in Jamaica, after stalling out, bringing, historic rainfall. Then going up towards Cuba, wreaking havoc across the entire eastern half of the nation there, and eventually moves north into the Bahamas. Both of these scenarios here, in which the HWRF and the AFSA model have been showing, both of these agree on likely the most impactful hurricane ever to hit Jamaica on record here. Again, both of these scenarios just showing catastrophic impacts. I know I've been throwing out the word catastrophic all week, but I really cannot stress this storm enough. When we say catastrophic, we mean it. You will see plenty of other weather enthusiasts, weather forecasters, whoever, they all have been using the same terms: catastrophic, historic, life-threatening. Those are the three words that we've been using, and we mean it. Trust me, this storm is going to be bad. This storm is the real deal. If you are not preparing in Jamaica, you're not going to have a good time out there, okay? So listen to government officials. Again, as we get into the final 24 hours before landfall, this storm is going to be one of historic proportions, again, for the nation of Jamaica, and it quite possibly could be the most impactful and the strongest hurricane ever to make landfall on Jamaican soil. So we really need to make sure that we get the word out to as many people as possible, that every single human being in Jamaica is aware of this situation, because, again, it really doesn't look like we have much good news for this area, and I'm really trying hard to not to sugarcoat this, but again, I want to throw out those kind of words just so that we can get everyone's attention, because the most important thing to come out of this video is that everyone is aware and prepared for the incoming hurricane, again, because this is one that we know is going to be bad, and we know is going to cause catastrophic problems. And when I say catastrophic, this is why, okay? This is the 4-day rainfall forecast from the Weather Prediction Center. Again, this is their official forecast specifically and exclusively for Hurricane Melissa. And this is very, very concerning. We now have a zone of 30-plus inches of rain expected in eastern Jamaica. This would shatter records, easily shatter rainfall records. But if we look here, again, all of eastern Jamaica is expected to pick up anywhere from 20 to 30 inches of rain. Western Jamaica, if we do see something like what the HWRF model is showing, or what the National Hurricane Center is expecting, then we'll see likely a little bit less more rain than the eastern side, where we see rather closer to 6 to 8, 8 to 12, and instances of 12 to 16 inches, which again is still going to cause very significant to extreme flash flooding and landslides in some areas. Alright, but if we do see again the storm continue to move just south of Jamaica and then make that sharp northeast turn, that's going to cause a lot of problems for eastern Jamaica, and they have noted that there is a possibility that we could see some areas pick up close to 40 inches of rain. Again, up to 40 inches of rain in eastern Jamaica. So if you find yourself living in this purple shaded area, you need to make sure you are getting to higher ground, that you have multiple ways to receive warnings, that you are just listening to government officials. If you are told to evacuate, do it, okay? You need to take this as seriously as you can. You need to make sure that you are staying ahead of this storm as best as possible, again, because this storm means business. That is a forecast that is really, really concerning, again, to my eyes, and I'm sure to everyone watching this video. We really just need to make sure that everyone is aware of how significant and, again, catastrophic this flooding event really will be. Alright, but if you look in southern Haiti, we could say some pretty similar numbers. Again, the south shore of Haiti is expected to pick up anywhere from 16 to 20 inches of rain, and a tiny sliver here of western Haiti could see closer to 30 inches of rain, again, which is an equivalent to 500 to 750 millimeters of rainfall. And then eastern Jamaica, again, with that up to 40 zone, that would be over 750 millimeters of rainfall. So, nonetheless, again, this is a very significant catastrophic rainfall event for all of these areas. Even up towards Cuba, we're still expecting, again, 12 to 16 inches of rainfall, and that number could rise, again, in the coming days. We still have a lot to figure out with this, where it's going to be making landfall, but anywhere in the orange shade, that is up to a foot of rainfall. The red shade is up to 16 inches. The maroon shade here is 16 to 20, and anything above that in the pink or in the purple shaded areas, that's where we're talking about 2 feet plus of rainfall. So again, this is just something that we cannot stress enough. It's going to be bad. There are going to be areas that could pick up potentially close to 3 feet, maybe even over 3 feet of rainfall in just, a couple of days. So this is what's going to make the storm so memorable and so catastrophic. Again, this is easily the most significant threat that's on the table, but when you put this with hurricane force wind gusts of, in some spots, potentially over 180 miles per hour, that is just going to create a absolute war zone out there, again, for hours upon hours. And on social media, a lot of people have been, kind of angered by the by weather forecasters and by meteorologists about their epic wording about the storm, how it's going to be catastrophic, life altering, extremely dangerous. Once again, like I said, we mean it, and we say that for a reason. We don't say those words lightly. You're only going to hear me say those words only maybe a couple times per year. Again, it really all depends on how active the year is. But once again, we really don't use those words lightly. We mean it, and a lot of people have been saying Jamaicans are used to this. They've gotten hit by major hurricanes in the past, which is true. They have got hit by very significant, and you could definitely make the case for saying that they've got hit by catastrophic hurricanes in the past. But just because that they have been through it does not change the intensity or the impact from the storm. You're going to get the same impact as any old Category 4 to Category 5 hurricane. So just because of how prepared they are or how used to this they are, which I still don't buy, again, from the general public, this is still going to be just as impactful. So all we need to do is use that wording to really get everyone's attention and really to make sure that everyone is actually aware of how bad this storm is really going to be. So just because, again, it's going to, be another storm that they have been, another storm in the likes of which they have been hit by in the past, that does not change anything about how impactful it's going to be. But now we look at the HAFSA 10-meter wind speed. So these are not your wind gusts, but these are your sustained winds from the hurricane, again, at the surface here. And if we look, we can see again the full progression of that storm. We are expecting the winds to skyrocket here, already getting to the 120 knots zone, which I believe is getting up to about 150 miles per hour. And once this gets in the 920s, this will go into the 150 knots zone, which I believe is like somewhere around 170 miles per hour. So again, this is a full-blown Category 5 hurricane. So at this point, you're seeing sustained winds of 170 to 180 miles per hour just south of the island of Jamaica, and then it finally starts to move north, and you will see that there are very light winds on the Jamaican island here. It's something with tropical tidbits, I think, that doesn't show. It like cuts off all of the strongest of winds over land, so you're not gonna like see that on the runs here. But basically, you could just look at is the max wind thing here. Whatever this says is the strongest winds that you're gonna get at the surface. Again, these are not wind gusts; these are sustained winds. So these are what the winds are gonna be throughout the entire duration. These are not what the gusts are going to be. Gusts are higher periods of wind that last anywhere from 10 to 20 seconds. These are sustained, just I don't know how to say this, but like winds that are going on and on, if that makes sense. And this makes landfall packing those winds of up to 128 knots, which is around 130 miles per hour. So you have sustained winds of 130 to 140 miles per hour, which again is going to bring this as a Category 4 hurricane. And then you're going to get gusts of likely 170 to 180 miles per hour in that scenario. And again, that brings the highest winds right into southern Jamaica. And at this point, it looks like the HAFSA wants the southern eye wall to be the strongest, which in some cases can happen. Usually it's the northwestern side, so we'll see what happens with Melissa. There could be some drier intrusion, so we'll see how that affects the storm. But again, it really looks like that all sides of the storm are going to be equally intense. And again, as that moves into Jamaica and into Cuba, it likely will pack hurricane force winds. Again, for Jamaica, gusts up to 170 miles per hour. For Cuba, likely gusts up to 130 miles per hour. So very, very significant storm nonetheless. And finally, I do want to look at the ensemble members here, the ensemble runs from the European. So this is the European ensemble. We've been looking at this quite a bit throughout the week. Again, trying to get an idea of what may happen with the storm after it gets to the Bahamas and the Greater Antilles. Alright, there was a signal earlier on that this could curve back into the eastern United States, all depending on the trough ejection timing. This has tightened up quite a bit. It really does look like the storm is going to go completely out to sea. Alright, so you can see about 80 to 90% of our members do show a completely out to sea scenario. However, we do see maybe like 6 to 8 members showing a landfalling scenario here. Again, very much as an outlier, but we do get a couple of members that do bring the storm somewhere into the eastern seaboard. Again, if we were to put areas at risk, which again I do not want to say this for certain, this is not me saying it's going to be likely. At this point, it is very, very low that we are going to see any impacts to land after this moves through the Bahamas. But if we were to see this storm get closer to land, it likely would end up somewhere closer towards Newfoundland and Nova Scotia. Again, Atlantic Canada would be the only areas that would need to watch this storm, but it is still very unlikely that this storm will get anywhere near there. Again, we are likely going to see that completely out to sea solution. And really, I would say the Northeast, it's almost down to a completely impossible chance that we're going to see this get anywhere near the eastern United States. We would have to see a pretty huge change in the trough ejection timing, which at this point we've pretty much got down completely. So it really does look like we could say this pretty certainly that the storm is going to go completely out to sea, again, likely only bothering the fish after it impacts Jamaica, Cuba, and the Bahamas as a historic major hurricane. Alright, so that's going to be the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you have notifications turned on that you don't miss out on any important live streams or updates. Again, we really need to make sure that everyone in Jamaica and Cuba is aware of the catastrophe that is potentially about to happen. When you get 40 inches of rain in especially a mountainous region, when you put that together, you're talking about Helene-like flooding, potentially even worse, okay? So we really, really need to make sure that everyone is aware of how bad this storm is going to be, how bad the flooding is going to be, and how bad the wind is going to be. Alright, so thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in the next video.